Welcome to the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Episode 1 of the Spotted Band. Please listen. One early April morning in 1883, just upon waking, I saw Sherlock Holmes neatly dressed standing at the head of my bed. Normally he liked to sleep in, yet according to the clock, it was only 7:15. I looked at him, a little surprised. My gaze also carried a hint of annoyance, for I too was accustomed to sleeping late. "I'm sorry to have awakened you," Holmes said. "What's the matter? A fire?" "No, a client is waiting. A young lady, distraught and anxious, urgently requested to see me. She is waiting in the drawing room. When young ladies dare to cross the city at such an early hour and wake strangers, surely something serious must be amiss. This case promises to be very interesting, worthy of your notes, so I thought it best to wake you so that you would not miss the opportunity." "Oh, my dear fellow, I would never miss such an opportunity, for any reason at all." I hurriedly dressed, and within a few minutes I followed my friend down to the drawing room. The young lady, dressed in black with her face partly hidden by a small veil, was seated by the window. She quickly rose as we entered. "Good day, miss," Holmes said warmly. "I am Sherlock Holmes, and this is my friend Dr. Watson. You may speak freely with him, as with me. I'm glad Mrs. Hudson was thoughtful enough to light the fire. You should sit closer to it, and I must offer you a cup of hot coffee, for I see you are shivering." "I am not cold," the girl said softly. "Then why?" "Because I am frightened, sir. Terribly frightened." As she spoke, she lifted the veil, and we saw that she was genuinely terrified. Her pallid face and wide eyes reflected her horror like a hunted animal. She looked about 30, but her hair was streaked with grey, and her gestures betrayed fatigue and weariness. By the corner of his experienced eye, Sherlock Holmes discerned everything about her. "Do not fear," he said. "We will help you relieve all your worries. I have no doubt. I know you arrived here on this morning's train." "Then you knew of me before I arrived?" "No, but I noticed on your left glove the remains of a return ticket. You must have risen very early, then endured a long ride on a single-horse carriage over muddy roads before reaching the station." The girl looked at my friend in astonishment. "There is nothing mystical about it, miss," he smiled. "The sleeves of your coat have fresh mud stains, at least 3 spots. No means of transport except a single-horse carriage could fling mud in such a pattern, especially for someone seated on the left side. You are entirely correct, however you deduced it. I left home near 6, reached Leatherhead at 6:20, and took the first train to Waterloo. Sir, I can no longer endure this situation. I will go mad if it continues. I have only one person to turn to, but he is unlikely to help. Therefore, I have come to seek your aid, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Can you help, at least to shed some light on the fearful mysteries surrounding me? Please tell us everything you can that will help us understand the situation causing you fear." "The most terrible thing in my present situation is my fears themselves, all extremely vague," the client replied. "My suspicions arise from very minor events which others might consider trifling, but I have heard that only you, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, can understand the wickedness of men. Only you can advise me how to navigate the dangers surrounding me." "I am listening, madam." "My name is Helen Stoner. I live with my stepfather. He is the last living member of one of England's oldest Saxon families, the Roylotts of Stoke Moran, at the western edge bordering Surrey." Sherlock Holmes nodded. "I have heard quite a bit about that name," he said. "At one time, they were the wealthiest family in England. Their lands stretched north to Berkshire, west to Hampshire. But by the late century, 4 successive generations squandered everything. In the 1820s, the remaining estate was gambled away by a man obsessed with betting, except for a few acres and an old house built 2 centuries prior. The last landowner retired to that house, living a miserable life as a poor nobleman. His only son, my stepfather, understood he had to adapt. He earned a medical degree and went to Calcutta. There, his skill and patience gained him many clients, but then his house was robbed, he killed a native servant in a rage and barely escaped justice. After a long prison sentence, he returned to England disappointed and pessimistic. While practicing medicine in India, Dr. Roylott married my mother, Mrs. Stoner, a young widow of General Stoner, commander of the Bengal Police. My sister Julia and I are twins. At the time of my mother's remarriage, we were 20. She entrusted her considerable annual income, no less than $1,000 per year, to Dr. Roylott's management, instructing him to divide it between us when we married. Mother passed away shortly after our return to England, 8 years ago, in a railway accident near Crewe. Immediately afterward, Dr. Roylott abandoned his practice in London and brought us to Stoke Moran to live in the inherited house. The income left by our mother was sufficient to indulge all our wishes, and it seemed nothing could prevent our happiness. But during that period, my stepfather's temperament changed drastically. Instead of visiting neighbours and forming friendships, he remained secluded, rarely leaving home, and whenever he did, he fought violently with anyone he met. The violent temper was hereditary in the Roylott men, intensified in him perhaps by years in the tropics. Several serious scuffles ended with police involvement. Eventually, he became the terror of the village. Everyone avoided him, for his extraordinary strength made him uncontrollable in anger. His only friends were wandering gypsies, whom he allowed to camp on the small family land. He enjoyed roaming with them and also kept exotic Indian animals. Currently, he keeps a cheetah and a baboon, roaming free day and night, terrifying the villagers almost as much as himself. From my account, you can imagine my sister Julia's pitiable life, and mine too. No servant could endure life in our home, so we did all household tasks ourselves. My sister died at only 30, her hair already streaked with grey like mine. So your sister is dead? She passed away 2 years ago. I was just about to tell you. As you see, our circumstances prevented us from socializing with anyone of our age or status. We have a maternal aunt, Honoria Westphale, living in Harrow, but we rarely visited her. 2 years ago, Julia went there for Christmas, met a naval officer, and became engaged. My stepfather knew of it but did not object. 2 weeks before the planned wedding, Julia suffered a horrific incident, depriving me of my only close companion in the world. Sherlock Holmes, who had been reclining in his chair with his eyes half closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked directly at the girl. "Please describe the event in detail," he said. "This is easy for me, for everything that happened during that dreadful time is etched in my memory." The main building, inherited by my stepfather, as I mentioned, was old, with only one wing still habitable. The bedrooms were earthen-floored, the drawing rooms were central. Of the 3 bedrooms, the first belonged to Dr. Roylott, the second to my sister, the third to me. None of the rooms opened into each other, but all had doors to the common hallway. Am I clear? Very clear. The windows of the 3 rooms faced the lawn. On that dreadful night, Dr. Roylott returned to his room early, but we knew he was not asleep because of the strong smell of Indian cigars he smoked. Julia left her room, came to mine, and chatted about her upcoming wedding. At 11 o'clock she left, but at the door she paused, looked back, and asked, "Helen, have you ever heard someone whistle in the night?" "Never," I replied. "Perhaps it's you whistling in your sleep." "Impossible. But why do you ask?" "For several nights at 3 o'clock I have heard a faint, distinct whistle. I am awake, and the sound awakens me. I cannot tell its direction. It might be from the next room, or from the lawn outside. Yesterday I meant to ask if you heard it." "No, I did not. Probably the gypsies." "Perhaps. But if it came from the lawn, why did you not hear it? Strange." "Oh, I sleep much more soundly than you." "Never mind silly talk," she smiled. closing my door. A short while later, I heard the key turning in her lock. "So it was so," Sherlock Holmes said. "Did you and your sister always lock your doors before sleeping?" "Yes." "Why?" "As I mentioned, my stepfather kept a cheetah and a baboon. We only felt safe with the doors locked." "I understand. Please continue." "That night, I could not sleep. I had a vague premonition of impending misfortune. We, as you know, are twin sisters, and surely you understand how deeply connected twins are. That night was dreadful. The wind howled and the rain poured heavily against the windows. Suddenly, amidst the roaring wind, I heard a wild scream of a woman in panic. I immediately recognized it. It was my sister. I jumped out of bed and ran into the hallway. As I was opening the door, I heard a faint whistle, just as she had described, and moments later the crash of a heavy metal object. When I ran to her room, I saw her door unlocked, the door slowly turning on its hinges. I was terrified, staring, uncertain of what would happen next. Under the hallway light, I saw Julia appear behind the door, her face pale with fright. She staggered, reaching her hands out to me, her whole body trembling as if intoxicated. I ran to her and embraced her, but at that moment her legs gave way and she collapsed to the floor. She writhed in unbearable pain. At first, I thought she did not recognize me, but when I bent over, she suddenly screamed in a voice I will never forget, "Heavens, Helen, the Spotted Band!" She tried to say more, pointing toward my stepfather's room, but another convulsion struck, preventing her from speaking. I leapt up and called my stepfather and saw him rush out of his room, still in his loose nightshirt. By the time he arrived, my sister had already lost consciousness. He poured brandy into her mouth and sent for the local doctor, but all efforts were in vain. She gradually weakened, then died, never regaining consciousness. My beloved sister had died in such a terrible way. "May I ask you a question?" Sherlock Holmes said. "Are you certain you really heard the whistle and the sound of a heavy metal object falling? Can you swear that you weren't mistaken?" "I am quite sure I was not mistaken. Yet I cannot claim absolute certainty, for the wind was howling outside and the old house creaked and groaned in all sorts of ways during the heavy rain," she replied. "Was your sister fully dressed at that time?" "No, she was only wearing a nightgown. In her right hand, she held a match she had just struck, and in her left hand, a box of matches. That proves she struck the match to see what frightened her. That detail is very important. So, what did the inquest conclude when they investigated?" He examined the matter very carefully, since Dr. Roylott had long been a suspect. But he could find no solid evidence explaining the cause of death. The bedroom door had been firmly locked from the inside. Outside the window there was also a wooden shutter fastened to large iron bars to prevent intruders. Furthermore, every night the bolts were carefully fastened. I also showed him the walls. They were perfectly sound. The floors were examined thoroughly, yet no suspicious signs were found. The chimney was wide, but one could not crawl through it. Therefore, when that tragic accident occurred, my sister must have been entirely alone in the room. What about the possibility of poisoning? The doctors examined the body but could not determine anything. So, in your opinion, what caused your unfortunate sister to die so tragically? I believe she died from sheer terror and nervous shock, though I cannot fathom what could have frightened her so intensely. Were the Daigen present on the estate that night? Yes, they were almost always near the estate. And what do you make of the Spotted Band your sister mentioned? Sometimes I think it was only meaningless words spoken in her delirium, yet other times I suspect she referred to some sort of gang, perhaps the Daigen, or maybe a brightly coloured cloth that the Daigen often use, which caused her to utter the strange words, Spotted Band. Holmes shook his head, clearly unsatisfied. "There is something else. Tell me more," he said. 2 years have passed since that day, and my life has grown lonelier and more isolated than ever. Last month, a close friend, whom I have known for many years, proposed to me. His name is Percy Armitage, the second son of Mr. Armitage from Crame Water, near Reading. My stepfather did not object, and we planned to marry this spring. 2 days ago, Dr. Roylott called in workmen to repair the west wing of the house. They demolished the walls of my bedroom, so I had to move temporarily into the room where my sister had died, sleeping on the very bed she had slept in. Last night, I could not sleep, thinking of my sister's tragic death. Then imagine my horror. I suddenly heard that faint whistle, the very same one my sister had heard before she died. I leapt up, lit a lamp, but saw nothing in the room. I was so terrified that I could not return to bed, dressed, and sat waiting. As soon as it was dawn, I rushed to seek your help immediately. You acted very wisely, my friend said. But have you finished your story? Yes, sir, that is all. Not quite, Miss Roylott. You are covering for your stepfather. What do you mean? What are you implying? Instead of answering, Holmes rolled up the sleeve of our client. 5 reddish bruises, the marks of 5 fingers, were visible on the girl's pale wrist. He has treated you very cruelly, Holmes said. The girl blushed and quickly pulled her sleeve down to cover the bruised wrist. He is a coarse man, she said, strong as a bodyguard and probably unaware of his own strength. We sat in silence for a while. Holmes rested his chin on his hands, staring intently at the flames in the fireplace. After some time he spoke. This case is truly mysterious. There are hundreds of details I need to clarify before deciding on our approach. We must not waste time. Could you take us to Stoke Moran today so we can examine those rooms thoroughly without your stepfather knowing? Yes, sir. He mentioned he must go to London today on some urgent business. He will likely be away all day, so nothing will obstruct you. Excellent. Then the 2 of us will go together. Do you need to arrange anything for yourself? I have a few urgent matters, but I will return immediately by the 12 o'clock train, so I will be home to receive you. Then please wait for us afternoon. I also have a few minor tasks to attend to. Will you join us for breakfast? Oh no, I must leave quickly. I hope to meet you again this afternoon. The girl lowered her black veil and left the room. What do you think of this case, Watson? Sherlock Holmes asked, reclining in his chair. I feel this is a deeply mysterious case, possibly concealing a vile crime. Truly mysterious, and deeply sinister as well. The girl said the floors, walls, and partitions are very sturdy. No one could have entered through the doors, windows, or chimney. So clearly my sister was alone when that mysterious death occurred. Then how do we explain the midnight whistle and the strange words she uttered before dying? I cannot yet conceive. You should think carefully about the midnight whistle and the spotted band of the Digan that the old doctor harbours on his estate. We also have reason to believe he is very intent on preventing the daughters of his former wife from marrying. Moreover, there is the matter of the band your sister mentioned, and finally, Helen Stoner hearing the sound of a heavy metal object falling. That noise may well have been caused by an iron bar attached to the outer window shutter striking its frame when it snapped back. All these details, in my opinion, can help us solve the case. But then what connection do the Deegan have? I cannot yet imagine. I see too many things contradicting the hypothesis you just suggested. I think so too. That is why today we must go to Stoke Moran. I want to see whether there is evidence to the contrary, or at least understand the situation more clearly. Oh, here comes another curious event. The door suddenly swung open, and a tall, muscular man appeared. He was so tall that his hat nearly touched the top of the doorframe, and so broad that he nearly filled the doorway. His broad face was wrinkled, tanned, and marked by all manner of wicked desires. He scanned us rapidly, his deep-set eyes and hooked nose giving him the look of a fierce, aged bird of prey. "Which of you is Holmes?" he demanded. "I am, sir," my friend answered calmly. "I am Dr. Grimesby Roylott of Stoke Moran." "Pleased to meet you," Holmes said. "Please have a seat." "I have no desire to sit with you. Your stepdaughter was just here. I have tracked her. What has she told you?" "It's rather cold for this season," Holmes said. "What did she tell you?" he hissed angrily. "But I heard the flowers are still in season," my friend continued. "Ah, trying to distract me, are you? I am not unfamiliar with you. I have long heard of you, Holmes, a man meddling in others' affairs." Holmes smiled, self-satisfied. "It's a pleasure talking to you," he said. "When you leave, please close the door, for the room is draughty. I will leave only after I have said all I need to say to you." "Do not meddle in my affairs. I know the Stoner girl came here, and I tracked her. I am a dangerous man. Look here." He strode toward the fireplace, grabbed the poker, and bent it with his sun-tanned, muscular hands. "Heaven help anyone who falls into my hands!" he roared, throwing the poker into the fire and leaving. "A most charming man," Holmes said, laughing. "Had he stayed, I could have shown him that my own strength is not less than his." Saying this, he picked up the poker and flexed it straight again with ease. "Watson, now I will prepare breakfast. Afterward I shall go out briefly, hoping to gather some news useful to our case." Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Sherlock Holmes returned, holding a blue sheet of paper filled with notes, sketches, and numbers. "I have seen the late wife's will," he said. "The total income is about $750. Each girl is entitled to claim $250 upon marriage. So if both marry, the old doctor will be left with a negligible sum. Even if only one marries, he suffers a considerable loss. This morning's work was far from wasted, for it shows he has every reason to prevent the daughters from marrying. Now, if you are ready, we shall call a cab to Waterloo Station. I would be grateful if you would put your revolver in your pocket. Bring the revolver and a toothbrush. 2 items are all we need." At Waterloo, we boarded the train to Leatherhead, then hired a horse-drawn carriage at an inn near the station. We travelled 4 or 5 miles along the scenic village roads of Surrey. The weather was superb, sunshine bathing the fields, a sky lightly veiled with clouds, and the air rich with the scent of damp earth. I felt a strange contrast between the sweet signs of spring and the dreadful business we were pursuing. My friend sat in front, lost in thought, while I crossed my arms, hat pulled low, chin resting on my chest. Suddenly he tapped my shoulder, pointing to the fields. "Look," he said. A lush garden stretched along a gentle slope, and amidst the trees rose the high roof of a dilapidated old building. "Stoke Moran, I presume?" he asked. "Yes, sir. That is Dr. Grimesby Roylott's residence," the driver answered. "You'll save time if you take the shortcut across the field. There's a young lady walking there." "That must be Miss Stoner," Holmes guessed. We alighted, paid the driver, and the carriage returned to Leatherhead, clattering along. "Good day, Miss Stoner," Holmes said. Our client ran forward to greet us, face bright with relief. "I have been expecting you," she exclaimed, shaking our hands. "Dr. Roylott has gone to London and will likely not return before evening." "We have already had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Roylott," Holmes said, briefly recounting the events. Miss Stoner turned pale. "Heavens, so he has been tracking me?" "Most likely. He is so cunning that I can never know when I am safe." "Did he say when he would return?" He must be cautious, realizing he has met someone even sharper than himself. "Tonight, you must lock your doors to keep him out. If he intends harm, we will send you to Harrow to stay with your aunt. But now we must make full use of the opportunity. Please lead us to the rooms we need to examine." The building was grey stone. The centre was high with 2 curved wings, Several windows in one wing were broken and patched with wooden boards. Many roof tiles were missing. The sight of crumbling walls confronted us. The central part was slightly better. The most modern section was the right wing. Curtains on the windows and smoke from the fireplaces indicated that the family currently lived in this section. Holmes paced the lawn, carefully observing the windows. "I guess this window is the bedroom you used. The center one was your sister's room, and the one adjoining the main building was Dr. Roylott's, correct?" "Yes, exactly, but I must currently sleep in the middle room." "Only temporarily while repairs are underway, I suppose. Also, may I ask, was it really necessary to repair so urgently? The wall at the end of the house looks solid enough." "Indeed. I am certain it is only an excuse to force me to move rooms." "Ah, perhaps that is true. Now, this narrow wing has a corridor from which all 3 bedrooms open, correct? That side must also have windows." "Yes, but very small, too small for anyone to crawl through." "Then from that side, no one could enter your and your sister's rooms if the doors were locked each night. Now, please, enter your room and fasten the doors securely." Miss Stoner obeyed, and Holmes tried every means to open the doors, but in vain. He said, "my initial hypothesis is ruled out. No one could enter this way if the doors are bolted. Now let us try the interior, see if we can discover anything new." A small side door led into the corridor from which the 3 bedrooms opened. We entered the second room, now Miss Stoner's bedroom, and the site of her sister's tragedy. It was a small, well-furnished room with a low ceiling and a large fireplace. A brown wooden wardrobe with drawers stood in one corner. In the other corner, a narrow white bed and a small table beside the window. Along with 2 armchairs that comprised all the furniture, not counting the carpet in the center of the floor. Holmes placed a chair in the corner, sat down, and silently observed the entire room, leaving no detail unnoticed. "Where does this bell pull lead?" he finally asked, pointing to a thick cord hanging near the head of the bed. "To the housekeeper's room. It looks newer than the other furnishings in the room." "Yes. It was installed a few years ago." "Did your sister request it?" "No, I never saw her pull it. We did all household chores ourselves, for the house had no servants." "Excuse me for a few minutes. I want to examine the floor more closely." He crawled around, scrutinizing every groove in the floorboards. Finally, he approached the bed, stared at it for a while, then examined the wall from top to bottom and bottom to top. Then he grabbed the bell cord and gave it a strong pull. "Why is there no bell sound? It's not even connected to the wire for the bell. Strange! Look, the cord is only tied to an iron hook above the vent. How absurd! And yet I never noticed it before." "Very strange," Holmes muttered, tugging at the cord. "This room has several peculiar features. For instance, the builder must have been insane to make a ventilation door into the neighboring room. He could just as easily have made it to the outside. It would have taken about the same effort." "That was done only recently," the young lady said. "Probably at the same time as the bell pull," Holmes remarked. "Yes, there were some minor changes in the house at that time." "Miss Stoner, would you kindly allow us to see Dr. Roylott's room?" Dr. Roylott's room was larger than the 2 rooms of his former wife's daughters, but the furnishings were very simple. There was only a bed, a small wooden bookcase, an armchair next to the bed, a folding chair against the wall, a round table, and a large iron cupboard. Holmes strolled leisurely around the room, examining each piece of furniture with great care. "What's in this cupboard?" Holmes asked, tapping on the iron door. "My stepfather's business papers." "Oh, have you ever looked inside?" "Only once, several years ago. I remember it was full of papers." "Does he keep anything else in there? Like a cat, perhaps?" "No, what a strange question. Take a look at this." He lifted a small saucer containing milk and placed it on top of the cupboard. "No, we do not keep a cat, but there is a cheetah and a baboon." "Ah, of course. The cheetah is simply a large, stuffed cat. But I think that small saucer could hardly provide enough for such an animal." "There is one more point I want to clarify." He took out a magnifying glass and examined the surface of a wooden chair very carefully. "Thank you. That clarifies it," he said, standing and putting the magnifying glass away. "Ah, this is most interesting." The object that caught his attention was a small whip hanging on the corner of the bed. However, the whip was bent at the tip and tied into a loop. "Watson, what do you make of this?" "It's just a normal whip. I don't understand why the tip is tied in a loop." "Not so normal, don't you see?" "I think I am done inspecting, Miss Stoner. The most important thing now is that you follow my advice exactly. This matter is serious. We cannot waste a single minute. Your life depends on it. I place myself entirely in your hands. First, tonight both of us must stay in your room." Both Miss Stoner and I looked at him in astonishment. "Yes, that must be done. Let me explain. That must be the local inn over there." "Yes, the Crown Inn." "Very well. From there, can you see your window?" "Yes, I can." "When your stepfather returns, do not leave the room. Claim a headache. Only when you hear him preparing for bed, open the window immediately and place a lamp on the sill to signal us. Then move all you need to the old room. I am sure you can spend the night there, despite the repairs." "Yes, that's no problem. The rest we will take care of. But what will you do?" "We will sit by your new room to uncover the cause of the noises that have disturbed you." "Mr. Holmes, I trust you must have reached a conclusion," Miss Stoner said, placing her hand on my friend's sleeve. "Perhaps you are right." "Then please tell me why my sister died." "Before telling you, I want clearer evidence. At least you can tell me if my guess is correct. My sister died of sudden fright." "Oh no, I do not think so. I believe there is a far more specific cause. But now we must leave, for if Dr. Roylott returns and finds us here, this move will be wasted. Goodbye, and be brave. If you follow my instructions, you may trust that we will soon remove the dangers lurking over you." Holmes and I rented a bedroom and a sitting room at the Crown Inn. Both were on the top floor, giving us a clear view of the buildings at Stoke Moran. At dusk we saw Dr. Grimesby Roylott's carriage pass by the inn window. The man appeared even taller beside the small groom. At the gate, the groom struggled for a while to open the iron gates, and we heard Roylott's hoarse voice roaring in anger as he shook his fists at the boy. The carriage passed the gate, and shortly after we saw a new lamp lit in a room at the house. "Watson, I was not sure whether to bring you tonight," Holmes said in the darkness. "It could be very dangerous. Can I help in any way? Your presence is valuable." "Then I will come with you." "Thank you. That's kind. You mentioned danger. Surely you've discovered more in those rooms than I have." "No, I only drew more conclusions. I suppose you saw what I saw." "I noticed nothing remarkable, except the bell pull." "I cannot imagine its purpose." "And the ventilation hole?" "Yes, but it is small. Even a tiny mouse could hardly pass through." I knew we would notice it even before arriving at Stoke Moran. "Well, that's a bit much, my dear Holmes." "Remember Miss Stoner saying her sister once smelled the smoke of Roylott's cigar? That proves there must be a passage between the two rooms. But it is very small, otherwise the coroner would have noticed. I concluded it is merely a ventilation hole. But the hole could hardly harm anyone. At least it coincides with the events. A vent above the bed, a bell pull, and the girl in the other bed died. Don't you see the oddity?" "I still don't see the connection." "Then you didn't notice anything unusual about that bed?" "No." "The bed was fixed to the floor. Have you ever seen such a setup?" "Perhaps never." The girl could not move the bed. It is fixed under the vent and the rope. We may call it just a rope, for it's not used to pull the bell. Holmes, I cried. Now I faintly understand what you mean. We are here just in time to prevent a terrible crime. Yes, quite terrible, but the night is far from over. Let's calmly enjoy these pipes and think of something pleasant for a few hours. Around 9 o'clock, the lights among the trees went out. The estate fell into darkness. 2 hours passed slowly, then suddenly a single light flared ahead. "That is our signal," Holmes said, standing. "The light comes from the middle window." I nodded again. "Remember, do not doze off. Your life depends on it. Prepare the revolver so that we can act if necessary. I will sit on the edge of the bed. You take that chair for now." I took out the small pistol and placed it on the corner of the table. Holmes had brought a long, thin stick, which he laid across the bed within reach. Nearby, he placed a box of matches and a candle. Once everything was ready, he extinguished the lights and we sat in the darkness. I shall never forget that dreadful sleepless night. I could not hear a single sound, not even the breath of my friend. I knew he sat a few steps away, eyes wide open, nerves taut like mine. The door shut out all light, leaving us in deep shadow. Outside, the night birds called occasionally. Once a long howl echoed like a cat's cry. It must have been the cheetah let loose. In the distance, the church bell struck the hour, a deep note every 15 minutes. Oh, how long those 15-minute intervals seemed. The clock struck 12, 1, 2, then 3 o'clock, and we sat in silence, waiting to see what would happen. Suddenly, a flicker of fire shone from the other side of the ventilation hole, then vanished immediately. Smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal wafted through. Someone in the neighboring room had lit a lamp. I heard a very faint movement, then silence fell again, though the burning smell grew stronger. For half an hour, I strained to hear. Then suddenly I heard another faint sound, like the hissing of steam from a boiling kettle. At that very moment, Holmes sprang up, struck a match, and furiously lashed at the bell pull with his stick. "Do you see it, Watson?" he hissed. "Do you see it?" But I could see nothing. When Holmes struck the match, I heard a faint whistle, clear as day. Yet the flame's sudden glare caught my tired eyes, making it impossible to say exactly what my friend was striking at. Still I could see his face, pale as a corpse, filled with terror. He stopped, staring at the ventilation hole. Then, in the deep silence of the night, a dreadful scream rang out, one I had never heard before. The scream grew louder and louder, a hoarse wail filled with pain, fear, and rage. I stared at Holmes and he at me until the final echoes faded into the night's quiet. "What does it mean?" I panted. "It means all is over," Holmes replied. "And after all, the end is better this way. Take up the revolver. We shall enter Dr. Roylott's room." With a solemn expression he lit a lamp and stepped into the hall. I passed by him into the room, knocking twice, but there was no response. He turned the knob and entered. I followed, revolver in hand. A strange scene met our eyes. On the table, a lamp cast a harsh light on the cupboard near the slightly open door. Sitting on the chair beside it was Dr. Grimesby Roylott, wrapped in his grey coat, the whip we had noticed that afternoon draped across his lap. His chin was raised, eyes fixed on a corner of the ceiling, a fixed, horrible stare. Around his head was a peculiar yellow band, spotted with dark brown marks. As we stepped in, he remained motionless. "The spotted band! The spotted band!" Holmes whispered. I stepped forward. At that instant, the band began to move. From Roylott's hair, a head with a straight neck emerged, the hideous head of a snake. "That is a swamp adder," Holmes cried. "More venomous than any species in India. He died 10 seconds after the snake struck. Quickly, confine the serpent in the iron cupboard, then take Miss Stoner to safety. Afterwards, notify the local police," he said, swiftly removing the whip from the doctor's lap. He looped it around the snake's neck, tightened it, and confined the reptile in the cupboard. That was the true cause of Dr. Grimesby Roylott's death at Stoke Moran. On the way back the following morning, Holmes explained the remaining details I had not yet known. "At first, I drew completely wrong conclusions," he said. "It shows, dear Watson, how dangerous it is to reason without full information. No doubt the poor girl's use of the band to depict what she saw in the matchlight and the presence of the animals in the estate misled me entirely, but I discarded that theory once I realized there was no threat from the window or the door. My thoughts quickly turned to the ventilation hole and the bell rope dangling above the bed, as I had mentioned to you. I also noticed the rope was fake and the bed firmly fixed to the floor. These details suggested immediately that the rope was merely a conduit for something travelling from the vent to the bed. I guessed a snake, knowing the doctor had received some specimens from India. I thought of the whistle, of course. The snake had to be called back before dawn so the victim would not detect it. He had trained it, probably with the milk saucer we saw, to respond to the whistle, climbing through the vent at the right moment, following the rope to the bed. The snake could bite the sleeper. Or not. Night after night, the girl could survive a week, but sooner or later it would strike. I had reached these conclusions before entering the room. Observing the chair, I realized the doctor must have stood on it to reach the vent. The iron cupboard, milk dish, and whip were enough to dispel lingering doubts. The heavy metallic sound that Miss Stoner heard was clearly caused by the stepfather slamming the cupboard to confine the dangerous animal. Once I had drawn these conclusions, I proceeded to verify them as you saw. Upon hearing the faint sounds, which I think you also heard clearly, I immediately lit the lamp and attacked the creature. So you drove it back into the vent, and by doing so, you sent it back to the master in the other room. Struck repeatedly, the snake was enraged and attacked the first person it encountered on its return. Thus, without doubt, I am indirectly responsible for Dr. Roylott's death. But I do not imagine it weighs heavily on my conscience.